Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Welcome back. And those of you that are new, welcome. Here we go. Joe Biden allegedly paid $5 million by Burisma executive as part of a bribery scheme, according to the FBI documents. Yeah. Biden's son Hunter was a board member of Burisma and also allegedly in on the scheme. If you remember, the first Trump, when he went on trial to be impeached, the first one was because he asked the president at the time of Ukraine to look into the fact about the allegations from Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and other things, if he would look into it. And they said he was using his office as president to go after a political opponent, and that was an impeachable offense. It's called deflection, folks. Everything that they do, that they accuse the other side of, the Democrats, is because they're doing it. Let's take a look. President Joe Biden was allegedly paid $5 million by the executive of the Ukraine natural gas firm Burisma Holdings. Her son Hunter Biden sat on the board. A confidential human source told the FBI during a 2020 June interview. Sources familiar told Fox Digital. Now remember something. The FBI had the person in Burisma. I guess it was blacked out. And they had all this information when the first impeachment was brought up and said absolutely nothing. In fact, their response was, of course, crickets. Knowing the whole thing was a scam, and they had the evidence to prove that the impeachment was a scam, they said nothing. Sometimes saying nothing speaks volumes. The sources briefed Fox News Digital on the contents of the FBI-generated FD 1023 form, alleging a criminal bribery scheme between then Vice President Joe Biden and a foreign national that involved influence over U.S. policy decisions. The form dated June 30th, 2020, is the FBI's interview with a highly credible. This is the FBI's calling him highly credible. Confidential source who detailed multiple meetings and conversations he or she had with a top Burisma executive over the course of several years, starting in 2015. This was long before Trump was elected. Fox News Digital has not seen the form, but was described by several sources who were aware of its contents. The form was used by FBI agents to record unverified reporting from confidential human sources. The form is used to document information as told to an FBI agent, but recording that information does not validate or weigh it against other information known by the FBI. Yeah. That's a little CYA there. Burisma executives sought the advice of a confidential source, a business professional, on gaining U.S. oil rights and getting involved with a U.S. oil company. The sources familiar with the document said. Burisma executive was speaking with a confidential source to get advice on the best way to go forward in 2015 and 16, long before Trump was president. According to the forum, the confidential human source of the Burisma executive discussed Hunter Biden's role on the board. The confidential human source questioned why the Burisma executive needed his or her advice in acquiring access to U.S. oil if he had Hunter Biden on the board. The Burisma executive answered by referring to Hunter Biden as dumb.
Are you stupid or something?
Or maybe this is more appropriate. Are you stupid or something? That's the clip from Forrest Gump when he's on the bus with a little girl. The Burisma executive explained to the confidential source that Burisma had to pay the Bidens because Ukrainian prosecutor Viktor Shokin was investigating Burisma, and explained how difficult it would be to enter the U.S. market in the midst of that investigation. If you remember the video, Biden says it right out. I think it was some kind of foreign affairs conference that he told the person, he said right up, there's no taking out of context. He said right up front, when I was in Ukraine, I told them, listen, I'm leaving in 6 hours. And if you don't fire that investigator, I'm pulling back the guaranteed loan of $1 billion. And he's sitting on the stage just as arrogant as hell and said, son of a bitch, I'll be damned. Less than 6 hours later, got the phone call. The investigator got fired and the prosecutor got fired. And he laughed about it. Arrogance. And nobody said a word. All of you Biden people, you knew that when you voted for him. The confidential source further detailed that conversations such with the Burisma executive that he paid the Bidens $50,000 each, to which the Burisma executive replied, it's not $50,000, it's $5 million. Now, I heard on Red Eye Radio tonight that the person that was funneling the $5 million to Biden, Joe Biden, and $5 million to Hunter Biden, $5 million each, said they put it through and busted it up in such small amounts and put it through so many bank accounts, it will take 10 years to track down where the money came from. $5 million for one Biden, $5 million for the other, the executive told the confidential human source, according to the source familiar with the document. A source familiar said, according to the document, the $5 million payments appear to reference a kind of retainer Burisma intended to pay the Bidens to deal with a number of issues, including the investigation led by Shokin. Another source referred to the arrangement as pay-to-play scheme. In other words, you do that with an attorney. You put him on retainer. You give him X amount of money. And then when a legal issue comes up, the attorney just takes over what you want to do because you already have the money in a retainer. He's already paid. Sources familiar told Fox News Digital that the confidential human source believes that the $5 million payment to Joe Biden and $5 million to Hunter occurred based on his or her conversations with the Burisma executive. The confidential source of the Burisma executive told he paid the Bidens in such a manner through so many different bank accounts that investigators would be able to unravel it for at least 10 years. I'm going to highlight that and say it again. The confidential source said the Burisma executive told him he paid the Bidens in such a manner through so many different bank accounts that investigators would be unable to unravel this for at least 10 years. Think about that. 10 years. The document then makes reference to the big guy, which is said to be reference to Biden. The Burisma executive said he didn't pay the big guy directly, meaning Biden. Now, this story is going a little bit longer than normal, but I think this is important. Fox News Digital had learned that the confidential human source had been used by the FBI as a regular, reliable source of information since 2010, over a decade ago, and has been paid approximately $200,000 by the Bureau, which is a lot of money, which means the FBI believes he's a credible source. And the FBI had this information as the articles of impeachment were filed against Donald Trump. They knew it was total bull, but they said nothing. And I can guarantee you, I would bet every dollar I have that the individuals on the committees in Congress run by the Democrats at the time knew it too, but went through with the impeachment anyway. Sources said the Burisma executive appears to be a very, very high level of the company. Now, the individual's name is in the document, but it was redacted. So, my gut tells me he was the head of Burisma. One source familiar suggested the confidential source could be referring to the head of Burisma, Zach Haleski, whatever, said the name of the Burisma executive is redacted in the document. Biden has acknowledged that when he was vice president, he successfully pressured Ukraine to fire Viktor Shokin, the prosecutor. At the time, Shokin was investigating Burisma Holdings, and at the time, Hunter had a highly lucrative role on the board. Yeah, he shined a chair with his ass on the board, receiving thousands of dollars per month. And then Vice President threatened to withhold $1 billion of critical U.S. aid if Shokin was not fired. That was a guaranteed loan to Ukraine. I said, this is what I talked about before. You're not getting the billion. I'm going to be leaving here in, I think, about 6 hours. I looked at them and said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor is not fired, you're not getting the money. And then the president of Ukraine basically said, you're not the president. He goes, well, call him. At the time, it was Barack Obama. Call him and see. Biden recollected the conversation during an event for the Council on Foreign Affairs in 2018. And he says clearly right in the video on stage in front of hundreds of people, "Well, son of a bitch, he got fired," Biden said during the event, and the people laughed. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time, solid on our side. Biden allies maintain that then Vice President pushed for Shokin's firing due to concerns the Ukraine prosecutor went easy on corruption. Yeah, they wanted to get a harder investigator and prosecutor in. Are you serious? And saying that his firing at the time was the policy decision of the U.S. and international community. Yeah, because they didn't want it to get out. In 2019, then President Donald Trump pressed Ukrainian President Zelensky to launch investigations into the Biden family actions and business dealings in Ukraine. And there's multiple people listening on the phone, even when the President of the United States talks to foreign leaders and foreign dignitaries. Lawyers, people from the NSA, all kinds of people. There's probably a good dozen listening. And now one of them said there was a problem with a phone call, especially Hunter Biden's ventures with the Ukraine natural gas firm, Biden's successful effort to have Shokin ousted. Trump's request was regarded by the Democrats as a quid pro quo for millions in U.S. military aid to Ukraine had been frozen. Documents also claim Trump was meddling in the 2020 presidential election by asking a foreign leader to look into a Democratic political opponent. That was the first impeachment, if you remember. Trump was later impeached by the House of Representatives for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, all stemming from the phone call and the question about the dealings. The Senate, of course, voted for acquittal. The confidential source, according to sources familiar with the forum, told the Burisma executive he could get away from the Bidens and said the executive should not be involved with them. Ukraine has always been corrupt. I mean, really bad for decades, maybe even over a century. We're saving democracy, first of all, is a lie, but I don't know, this is another story for another time. A source from another document told Fox News that the confidential human source goes on to detail a later conversation with Burisma executives following the 2016 presidential election. The confidential source asked the Burisma executive if he was upset that Donald Trump won. The source of the Burisma executive told the confidential source he was an oracle, referring to his or her advice to get away from the Bidens due to fears of potential investigations in their dealings. Yep. The House Oversight Committee subpoenaed that document after a back and forth between the committee and the Bureau and amid threats of holding FBI Christopher Wray in contempt of Congress. The FBI allowed all committee members to view the document in a secure setting on Capitol Hill. Now, whether they were allowed to make copies, photograph them with their phones or whatever, I don't know. The revelation of the document came after a whistleblower approached GOP Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer from Kentucky. The whistleblower said the FBI was in possession of the document. The form dated January 30th, 2020. Yep. The White House has maintained that President Biden was never involved in his son's business dealings and had never discussed them with him. I've got two kids. My son's 38, my daughter's 40. If my son was involved or my daughter was involved in business at this high level, and I was the vice president for 8 years and a senator for 100 years, you don't think for a minute they would have talked about it? Hunter Biden is currently under federal investigation for his quote-unquote tax affairs. See, that's what they're going to do. They're going to find out that he didn't claim a lot of income. They're going to find the hell out of him, have him do community service or whatever, maybe even do 6 months in some federal lockup where he mows lawns, and cooks breakfast, and that'll be the end of it. They'll throw him under the bus to save his father. The investigation began in 2018 and was prompted by suspicious foreign transactions. The White House declined to comment, pointing to the statement by Joe Biden Thursday, calling the allegations a bunch of malarkey. I know that people are dug in on both sides. One side wants Donald Trump burned in his ashes, sent into space, so to speak. And the other side wants Biden to go away and go to jail and die in prison. But there's a whole bunch in between. The people that are dug in on the left, the 40% of the voters, this isn't going to matter to them. Just like Joe Biden admitting that he used his influence to get a prosecutor fired, an investigator, because he wasn't tough enough. Nobody believes it. Even the people that voted for Joe Biden don't believe it. And that's what the DeSantis people and some of the Republicans are saying is, we get rid of Trump, we can win the presidency. But here's my take. If the Republicans turn on Donald Trump, they'll be okaying and encouraging all the lies for the last 6 years. All the fake impeachments, all the CNN and MSNBC and all the rest of the mainstream media, all the lies they told that they knew were lies just to trim down Donald Trump, just to pound him down and make him lose the election, and also for him never to be able to run again. That's okay. It's not even including the social media companies that lied or used Facebook for a perfect example, and Twitter, that concealed the fact that the Hunter Biden laptop, remember that story? What a moron. I mean, the guy's not too bright, obviously. He leaves his laptop for repair and never picks it up with all that information on it? Are you insane or just stupid? Probably stupid. All that going on. And if Donald Trump does not end up being president of the United States again, then all that effort and all those lies and all those millions spent to go after Trump will work. And they'll do it 10 times worse the next time. Think about that. If they're defeated now, they'll never try at this level again. And until next time, goodbye and good luck.